Hello, hello. Happy Sunday, everyone. Welcome back to the UpSet podcast. We're happy that you tuned in. And when I say we, I mean the crew. Hey,
Her,
guys.
her
Hello,
favorite,
family.
Hey.
her favorite team. Her
Good
favorite
evening.
Yes,
team.
Yes,
indeed.
This is a little
that's
different.
on
The
brand.
camp meeting crew.
Yeah.
Oh,
Tally. Mm-mm.
Can't mean he's
He's
behind
just
us
jealous
now.
that he
but,
wasn't with us.
I couldn't be with you, I tell you.
No, we missed you. We missed you both.
Yes, we did. And all your fans. We probably had three
Yes.
people that saw the rest of us.
He's back, y'all. He's back. You see
Yeah.
him? He's right there.
Right.
I'm gonna tell you, I could have used a fan when I was up at camp meeting.
Yeah, it was hot.
It was hotter than fish grease. Let me tell
Yeah,
you.
it was definitely
was-
hot. Very
yeah.
quickly.
Yeah.
So, we haven't had a chance to talk about current events in detail in a little while. So, what's kind of been blowing up your timeline and flowing in your news path?
I thought she said Pat, but
News path.
listen, I'm keeping an eye on this England. What's his name?
With Boris Johnson?
Yeah,
Yeah.
who resigned. He's going to stay on until they pick a new leader. But I'm kind of
He
looking at
hopes.
that. Yeah.
Well, he hopes. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's one of the things I'm looking at the political side. And, it's funny, all going through camp meeting and all of that. I stay away from,
Right.
the news a lot. But, the war is still going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it's
right.
like,
And getting worse, actually.
yeah, and it's actually getting worse. So that was my part of the timeline. We continue to pray for Ukraine.
Well, Putin gave us a little threat to say if the West helps him one more time, something bad's going to happen to them.
Okay.
Wow.
All right.
We're on the
It's
verge.
difficult to even get clarity with the way the news is being reported. If you listen to Fox, you get one spin. You listen to MSNBC, you get another spin. And it's just so difficult. And you have to deep dive to really find out what's going on. But one thing in this week that kind of brought to me a reality that we could be suffering from very soon. There was a story about Sri Lanka, which is south of India. It's an island nation, and of course their their inflation rate is 60%.
Mercy.
Food shortages. In fact, they've gotten to the point where they've stopped printing money. And then the thing that really got me was that they interviewed one guy who was in the gas line, and he said he had to wait 6 hours to get his car fueled. The gas lines were miles and miles. So I know that situation in Sri Lanka is kind of special in terms of, their economy and all of that. But we could very well see that here. I remember back in the 70s, and I drove a Volkswagen back then, and I had to almost make an appointment at the gas station, to get fuel.
Yeah.
I mean, you stand in line, and they
Was
would
that
only give you so much.
73, Chuck? 73?
Yeah, I had a VW, and I got in line and kind of felt like whatever they were able to give me, because I was driving a VW, I'd be able to go somewhere. But they were limiting the gas to like maybe $10 or $5, but you were happy to get whatever you could get.
Wow.
And the lines went around the corner. So don't be surprised if that stuff starts happening again.
Well, thank God today our gas is coming down.
Gas is coming down.
I'm paying $4.50 something now. What before was almost $5.
Yeah, but think just a couple 3 years ago it was $2.50 or $2.75.
Yeah, it's hard to even remember.
See how
those
we've
times.
adapted.
Yeah.
No. I still know it's bad, but anyway, 5 cents I can save. I'm just happy about it.
Marlena, we know you don't feel the pinch. It's okay. It's all right.
Yes, I do.
Well, one of the things that is capturing me in the news is that gun violence is starting to play out in places where you normally don't expect it. On Friday,
All the soft targets.
the former prime minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe, was assassinated by a gun. Now in Japan last year in Japan, 9 people were killed by guns in the entire nation.
Yeah.
You don't see this happening. And this is a former world leader who was assassinated with a gun. And all around the
they
world
were horrified. They were horrified in Japan.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's and the world is becoming, and it's starting to be interpreted through the barrel of a gun. And you know, whether it's a big gun or a little gun, guns proliferate. And so
I don't know if you, of course, we all know about what happened in Illinois, but one of the saddest stories I heard from that incident was about a young couple who shielded their child from the gunman. They both lost their lives. And the child was wandering in the street with blood. That just really kind of took me out.
It's heartrending.
Did you see the couple that picked up the child?
No.
So there was a couple, they were just interviewed MSNBC or CNN, one of them. But anyway, they were interviewed and they were saying they saw the little boy walking around. And so they gathered him with their children and they went to the fire department. And so, you know, the fire department was so busy. So, well, we really can't, you know, watch him, you know, because they were really busy. And so I think a detective came and was able to contact the parents. But they said the little boy, he seemed to act kind of normal. He wasn't crying or anything. He's like, my dad he's going to get the car. He's going to get the car. And they kept asking him what was his name. He would never say what his name, because I think he's like, they thought he was like 2.5 to 3 or something like that. But he would never say his name, but he kept saying, Daddy's going to get the car. You know, he was just unaware that his parents were gone. Of course, he's a baby. But it was interesting that he wasn't crying.
Understand, didn't he get his grandparents? Did they finally found his grandparents?
Yes, they found the family, and the family came to pick
I saw the GoFundMe. You know, they're raising money.
Over 2 million.
Yeah.
Already collected over 2 million.
Wow, that's a lot. I mean, but only time will tell how that trauma will register in that child. But he has been traumatized. He doesn't know it, and he can't. Children, they just hold on to it because they have no power to redirect the trauma. All they can do is absorb it, and then later on it shows up.
And let me just throw this in, because police officers and the bad things they do always comes to surface because it makes a good news story and sells a lot of soap. But we need to give a shout out to these first responders and these police officers.
Oh yeah.
You know, these are truly the good guys, and they have to get out there, be the first responder, and be a target for this crazed, what this crazed guy did. But it's a very, very tough job, and they can't pay these first responders enough.
True.
I mean, they have an amazing responsibility. So just a shout out, any of our listeners or audience that are police officers or rescue squads, EMTs, first responders,
firefighters.
Thank God for you.
I was reflecting. I'm sorry, Marlena, reflecting on the magnitude of how American it is for these attacks to happen on the 4th of July. And there was another report of someone who was planning on doing this in Richmond, Virginia at a parade.
Wow.
Someone heard about it and notified the officials, and they arrested him before he could carry out his plans. And he had guns.
Wow.
He and his friend. So someone heard their plans, heard them talking, and they snitched right away.
Thank God.
And because they heard something and said something, they saved many lives.
And the man in Illinois was going to go to another place and do it too. He had to.
He was on.
Let me get obliquely theological on you for a minute. What people don't recognize is that at the heart of sin is the issue of entitlement and empowerment. And what we're seeing in our culture today are people who have distorted views of being disempowered, and they're finding ways to gain power in a perverse and distorted way. Because somehow or another they feel that they're being denied. This is what Satan sold Adam. Look, somebody's taking your power away. You should be able to eat of any tree you want.
Right.
So eat from this one. And the issue of sin always has to deal with, how am I empowering myself?
Have mercy.
Yeah, that's the bottom line. Well, I think that's a nice segue. And
That was nice. We talk about all this death. Yeah, that was nice.
maybe into
Speaking of
our
power, I
topic.
have the power to stop you and start this show.
No. I mean,
Bang, bang,
this
bang.
topic that we're going to cover today is one that I think we've been, kind of had in our queue for a little while, and I'm glad that we finally had the opportunity to talk about it because it's something that at one point was taboo, like to even say the word was like, you know, and I'm glad that we're going to be able to have a discussion about this. And anytime we have a discussion, we welcome the comments from you, our viewers. We check them out in the chat, and our goal is to have a healthy dialogue about this and maybe
I
help some
noticed
of us
she hasn't said the word yet.
Oh, I'm not to say. I'm
'Cause
gonna
we
let you
don't
say
talk
It
it.
does
about
have to do
Bruno.
with
We don't talk
death.
about
It
Bruno.
does.
Yeah.
And I
So,
might add, just as a way of a disclaimer, this is a discussion, not a
yes.
therapy group, not a so consult your own whatever you consult. Don't this is a discussion.
Yes, this is a discussion, and
That's a
the opinions
therapist.
expressed here today are those of the yeah.
Right.
But yeah. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our lead for today, none other than Sir Tally.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we now get an opportunity to take a look at a word that has proven to be a part of our lives for better or for worse, sometimes for richer or for poorer. But in order to really take a look at this word, let's do so from the context that allows us to really give consideration to our topic for today. When you open the Bible, the thing that catches you in the beginning is the fact that a man and a woman come together. And we've seen this thing played out again and again throughout our lives. A handsome and strong man finds himself in the company of a beautiful woman, and the two of them stand before God and before men, and they make pledges to one another and share vows and exchange tokens, saying that they will love each other throughout the rest of their lives and they will not stop loving and sharing in this commitment until death they do part. And we've come up with a name for this most sacred of human institutions and covenants. It is called marriage. Marriage is a sacred thing, holy, and not to be entered into lightly. And therefore, we seek the presence of Almighty God, saying that we will keep this union, this covenant between each other. So that's what marriage is all about, two people coming together to love each other forever. But something happens after they make that promise. It's a little thing called life. Life intervenes. And before you know it, very often, that union, those promises that were made begin to suffer some fissures, some cracks, some breaking, some fracturing. And two people who have promised to love each other forever find themselves pulling apart, going east and west. And those who said that they would love each other until death do they part find that they can't make it that long. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in the midst of a crisis in this country, and that is the crisis based upon divorce. That's the word, the D word, divorced. 90% of Americans, it is discovered, get married. And of those who get married, we all know the baleful statistics. 50% of them get divorced. The number is going down now. And many people are saying, see, we're getting better. But the truth is, the reason the number is going down is because fewer people are getting married. Here's the bad news. You would think that people, after they get married, they would learn lessons and they'd be better the second time around. But 60% of second marriages end in divorce.
Hmm.
But the third time is a charm, they always say, except in marriage, because in marriages, third marriages end up 73% of the times in divorce. Divorce is a horrible scar upon the countenance of human societal life. We have to figure out a way to make it better. And those of us who follow the Lord and who know God, we recognize that the way to help a marriage to work is to bring Christ into the middle of it. And if you do that, you have a better chance of being happy, you would think. But here's the bad news about that. They have discovered that in the born again Christian community, the likelihood of divorce is actually higher
Hmm.
than it is in the community of those who do not believe at all. And that number translates also into the Adventist community. It has something to do with the fact that profession creates a higher level of expectation, and a higher level of expectation lays the foundation for a higher level of disappointment, which leads to a greater level of, how shall we say it, ennui and disappointment and brokenness. So, what we're dealing with now is the greatest of human institutions suffering at an alarming rate. And in the world of Christians, it's even higher. The question for us is, what do we do about divorce? How do we live with the brokenness that it leaves behind? How do we acknowledge its existence without encouraging it? But also, how do we acknowledge its existence without leading to greater pain in those who endure it? Ladies and gentlemen, that's why we bring together the finest minds anywhere to be found, from sea to shining sea, the members of the UpSet podcast, to fix this problem on one Sunday afternoon. What say ye one?
Yes.
What say ye all?
That was a good setup.
This is my, I know, this is
Yeah.
why Tally's our favorite, man.
So what do we do? Let's start here. I mean, when we talk about divorce, one of the things we found, of all of the reasons for divorce and all of the things that contribute to divorce, we found that there is one constant in divorce, and that is, at the foundation of every divorce is marriage.
Yeah,
And so, in
true.
order to understand what divorce is, it might be helpful to understand what marriage is. So what is it? Divorce is, the best way to look at divorce, it is the death of marriage. So what is it that we are creating when we create a marriage? Pat, you're a therapist. Go.
I came here to learn.
And there was silence in heaven for the space of a half an
I
hour.
came here to learn.
I'm the youngest one, so I'll
Go ahead.
yeah, I'll try. So I think a marriage is a meeting of two worlds, two people, two perspectives, two beings who become una flesh, one flesh. And somehow that gumbo, as dysfunctional as it can be sometimes, if God is at the center of it and they both are self-sacrificial and surrendered to Christ and committed to making it work, that gumbo can somehow taste good and work well for a long time.
Gumbo got shrimp in it, so we know it doesn't translate well to this conversation. But,
it's a vegetarian kind, sir. Vegetarian.
Yeah, but I mean, that's all good. I mean, a lot of conditions stated there. If Justin said, if there's crisis in the middle, and if you come together, and if you got soup or gumbo, it'll work out.
Yeah,
but isn't that true that I'm sorry, Pat.
No, go, please.
Okay.
Please.
But isn't that true that marriage does take conditions? I mean, we can be naturally selfish, and in our own eyes, we think things should go one way. But God's word, will tell us as people to be selfless, and there are times when you might be right and you have to give in. So I mean, there are conditions. Of course, it depends on what's happening in the marriage. If someone's being abused or hurt, those are different situations that we wouldn't encourage people to endure. But marriage is something that you have to work on consistently.
Come on, give me a sentence. What is marriage in a sentence? I mean, just
a union between two people. I mean, well, we can't even say man and woman. A union between two people.
What?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, let me give you my
church theology changing here in
Yeah, no, it's not. But I'm
love
just saying.
Love.
But no, a union between two people who vow under God to live life together.
And
so, okay, Tasha said marriage is roommates with religion involved.
May I add to what she said? It is also contractual beyond emotional feelings.
Okay, all right.
You said covenant in your intro, Taliaferro. Can humans keep covenants?
Yes, they can.
Yes.
Yes, they can. I mean, as a matter of fact, societal life is based upon humans keeping covenant. Something as simple as, when I get to this intersection, I'm going to stop at the light. I'm depending upon you to keep that covenant. Other than that, you're going to turn me into road pizza. And so, yeah,
I don't know, man. I think, the only thing that we know about marriage and biblically is what God has put together. And by the way, that's not in the Bible, but I'm saying
yeah,
you had Adam and Eve. So that's all we really know. And it's strange that we could take two people from two different lifestyles,
yeah,
two different
true.
backgrounds.
World.
Can I just, let me just go a little bit deeper. Everyone goes through trauma in their lives,
Hmm.
some kind of trauma. The word when we use the word trauma, we always think of something that's, hit by a car, or something that
Mhm.
destroys.
Extreme, yeah.
Everybody has got, right, the extremes. Everybody will go through something, from even the way you eat. Even, when you put two lives together, it's a mixture, right? And we always come up with some type of magic fuel to say this mixture becomes one. Well,
Dysfunction plus dysfunction equals function.
yeah, no matter how you
Mhm.
look at it, it doesn't, I know I'm gonna get
Dysfunction
cussed. I
times
know I'm gonna
two.
get cussed
Dysfunction.
out for it. I
Mhm.
know I'm gonna get cussed out for it. But the truth is that um some mixtures just don't mix. I mean, you have oil, you have water. No matter how you try to put it together, it's it's
Yeah.
it, it's not going to work.
Yeah, it's like grits and sugar. It don't mix.
Some people love that.
No,
Or
not the
what you
grits.
call it,
Some love
Well,
sweet grits.
or something
it's
in potato salad or whichever.
raisins.
Raisins.
Raisins
The,
in
the
potato
the
salad.
reason I ask is because, in order to understand, divorce is the death of whatever marriage is
Right,
intending to be.
Mhm.
right,
Mhm.
right.
And in order, so the best way to get to divorce is to understand what you're trying to do through marriage, like Pat said, there's nothing in the Bible that even says Adam and Eve were married. I mean,
That's right.
but there was something. There was covenant. There was the
Mhm.
two of them
Mhm.
coming together. Jesus later on says that they were created that way. Man created first, and then God creates a woman, because man is incomplete without a
Right.
woman. And so, after God creates a woman, puts the woman with the man, and in that covenant, in that union, they are asked to reflect, to be a living reflection of the image of God. Male and female created he them in the image of God.
Right.
Mhm.
Created. So maleness and femaleness together is that reflection, and marriage becomes a laboratory through which it lives itself out. Which explains why in Malachi 2:16 it says that God hates divorce,
Hmm.
because when divorce comes, it destroys that
Yeah.
presentation of the image of God as, male and female coming together to be productive and procreative and nurturing and sustaining. And as a divorced man, I recognize that. GP?
Yeah, you said marriage. I might be misquoting you, but marriage is the lab of God's love, right?
Yeah, it demonstrates. Yeah, it allows
So
for
Mhm.
the
is
demonstration.
marriage a place where you can experiment and grow in God's love, or is it where we should be displaying God's perfect love?
I just want to make sure you're not shopping at certain stores that sell certain things there, GP. But when you're experimenting,
That
but
word experiment,
I
yeah.
mean, instead of experiment, let's use the word experience.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Because I mean, just as when Christ goes in the garden and says to the Father, take this cup from me, and the Father does not.
Right.
Um, there is yielding and submission, and we're told that that's what marriage is supposed to be like. It is co-equals working together, and with love as the thing that brings them together, motivates them, and keeps them together. And it is the best way. Nothing is a greater witness on this earth than when two people exclusively love each other and reflect the image of God through that love.
Mm.
And when it breaks, I mean, Malachi 3:16, I hate divorce. The one who divorces his wife covers his garment with violence. It says, I mean, God clearly would prefer to not have it, and we water marriage down. I mean, like when they tried to trick
Mhm.
Jesus said, wasn't like that from the beginning. It
That's
was
right.
supposed to be like this. And
That's right.
so marriage has a place, and sometimes, because we're human, it fails.
Yeah.
Nick, I think one of the things we also have done, even growing up, right? You watch Disney, or you watch, any of these, love stories. It's we look for some type of magic in the day of the wedding. We look for the magic in what is the first couple of months are going to look like.
Happiness, pure
And
happiness.
no, yeah, and there's a whole lot of factors that's involved. Economics is involved. Children are involved. Family members. I always tell people that when you get married, you're marrying both sides of
You're
family
marrying two
together.
families.
It's not just you, it's the family. It's you're marrying demons. Your demons and their
Man.
demons.
Yes.
Hey,
I'm sorry, Pat.
Welcome to the podcast. Optimism is us.
You're marrying demons.
No. I really mean that because
Demons.
when you take two families and put it together, we always go for the positive. I'm sorry, but we always do. She's beautiful. He's beautiful. They look alike. They and all of that. Recognize that you got to live with them for the next 365 days, and there's some other stuff that comes along with that. Now, remember, we're not even mentioning God right now. We're just talking about the way
I have
people are.
I have a very photogenic mind. I'm still stuck at demons.
Marrying demons.
Yeah.
And do you, Mephistopheles,
You know what?
take Beelzebub to be your
You said you gotta take the good and the bad.
Is that for people to say? So that's why I don't like my in-laws. They're demons.
That's why my children turned out that way. It came from your side.
Guys, just think, just think of the statistics with the amount of people with mental illness, 1 in 4.
Sure.
And you put two people together, even if one has the mental illness, but boy, if both of them, so we can see the challenges now, and especially there's so many undiagnosed. And so when you bring people like that together who refuse counseling, they refuse any help, what do you think is going to happen in the homes?
So what we got so far is that
even in Christ,
it's demon crazy people.
No, I'm trying to show the challenges, because we do go in with the hopes, and most people in dating, they're on their best behavior. Most.
That's right.
Oh,
that's exactly right.
On their best. And so
you know what?
Every marriage should turn into an exorcism.
I'm going to be vulnerable at this moment and say this, that I can think of 100 reasons to have gotten married to Natalie, my wife. I could think of 2 reasons why I don't want to be with her at all. And those 2 reasons have a way of gnawing at you, and we tend to forget about the good stuff or what we can grow on, and we look at the 2 that's just always on you, and then we start to make decisions, and we start to add on those type of things that would say to us, I don't want to be with you anymore because of those 2 things, without saying I need to be with you because of this 100.
Natalie's on the line, and she's saying that
I was waiting.
the numbers for her in the opposite direction, 2 reasons to stay, 98. Thank you, Natalie. Yes, we'll tell them, of course. And tell all the other demons that
they don't want to get married.
But
No, but that's true. I remember one of the best pieces of advice we received, or I received in premarital counseling, was she asked me to think about something that really annoys you about Andre. So she's like, get it in your mind right now. So, I figured it out. She's like, imagine that being 10 times worse. She said, would you still want to be with them? And so it's because they say, once you get married, now you're living with that. And where before you could kind of like, if you can't take the faults that you see in that person and imagine them magnified and still be able to deal with it, that should be a big red flag for you that might not be
Let me pull out my
Goodness.
referee's whistle. We ain't talking about how much we going, how what it take to stay together. I got 2 reasons. We're talking about divorce, the ugly underbelly of the death
Right.
of marriage. What
Yeah,
happens,
yeah.
and
And
sometimes it does not work. And
right.
let me just ask the question: is it ever acceptable? Is there ever now we know God hates divorce
Mhm.
because it obliterates the main image of God, and God, he hates it. But is it ever acceptable to get a divorce? And
I'll
we're
answer.
speaking to
I
the
would
church
think-
say
now.
yes.
I think there are
Yeah.
circumstances
Yeah.
that warrant,
Yeah.
I think
warrant
there's.
the divorce.
I'm going to say this. I'm going to back off of this. I think there are circumstances that bypass what we have biblically.
Okay.
Oh,
Now,
absolutely.
Okay. That's what I was gonna say. Are you
Yeah,
saying acceptable
I
to
agree.
God or acceptable to our fellow man? Because
acceptable to
there's a
God. Acceptable to God.
Acceptable to God.
Are there
some falls.
reasons acceptable?
Because
Let me ask
go ahead.
the question inside
Go
out.
ahead. Go ahead.
Are there? Do you believe that there are quote specific grounds for divorce? I mean,
Yeah,
Jesus
the
always
Bible
says,
does
The Bible
share
gives us
some.
a few,
Yeah, it
but
does share some.
I would even say some beyond that.
one of the things that we got to be careful with is what the Bible is speaking to as circumstances at the time. Remember now, whenever it talks about grounds for divorce, it's only talking to men.
That's right.
And
Right.
and so it is not it's not being definitive and comprehensive. It's addressing the situation because only men could divorce their wives. So it's only talking about when and what it says is basically that if there's adultery, then you can divorce.
Right.
Basically, what it's saying is if she done packed up and she went living down the street with Bobo, then you might go ahead and admit the fact that you ain't married no more, fool. So
Nick, can
Abandonment.
I take this somewhere else? What if you got married and God was the center of your joy?
yeah.
Halfway through your marriage, forget halfway through. Yeah, halfway through your marriage, God is no longer the center of your joy. Everything is affected when it comes to that. And so how do you build on something that's not there anymore?
This is the heart of the divorce issue.
Mhm.
The Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians 7 talks about it, like, where there's spiritual mismatches. And he says, if the believing husband and the believing wife, and he's trying to say, try to stay together. But then there's a line that gets thrown in there that we never give consideration to. It says, if the husband or wife who isn't a believer insists on leaving, let them go. In such cases, the believing husband or wife is no longer bound to the other. And then Paul gives a maxim, a principle. He says, for God has called us to live in peace. In other words, there are times where divorce is legitimized by saying, this creates greater peace than trying to force this union to exist. There are times because remember now, what God is looking for is the image of God to be replicated. There are times when two people together, they're replicating them demons that Pat has talked about. and the best way to get closer to the image of God is to say, you know what, I recognize that what I'm demanding of you for my happiness and what you're demanding of me for your happiness creates a strife that is destroying the image of God in both of us. We need to be at peace. It is not what God intends, but it is what God will accept as being in the best interest of the peace that is what he intends. And then the question then becomes, what do you do with people who endure that level of look? I was divorced in 1995 after being married for 15 years. It is one of the most regrettable decisions I've ever made. I say that not in saying that I was wrong or evil or bad, but I know what the legacy of divorce is. And we had a pretty good divorce. Used the same lawyer. Wasn't any who's fighting for this and all of this kind of, we ain't had nothing to fight for, no how. But it was a pretty agreeable divorce. I mean, but it was still one of the worst things that ever happened in my life.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and if I can just add to that tally, divorce does destroy,
It
even
does.
when you feel that, it was right to do. You still, I mean, there's a way of feeling shame and
Yep.
guilt or why did, disappoint me? Why did this happen to me? And I just want to say to those who are in violent situations, that's not God. God doesn't want you to live like that. And oftentimes people in church will say, stay, trust God that it'll get better, and I by no means agree with divorce. I believe in the sanctity of marriage and desired it. And I was only married 2 years and 10 months and had to get out for the same reason. But you imagine the disappointment and the sorrow that one feels upon being divorced. So, this is not a great topic. It really is a death, but, sometimes it is necessary. And someone who is living outside of the home, they have no idea what happens. Even with those who shout the most, scream the most of God, you have no idea what happens in the home. So we have to be very careful when we tell people to stay, and you really don't know the situation, because you could be causing someone to be in a volatile situation that could take their lives.
It also has a for lack of a better term, I mean, it can be collateral damage to both sides of the marriage, because when you have families that come together in a divorce takes place, now you've got collateral damage. And it's difficult for those two families to remain a family because of one taking one side and the other and that sort of thing. And so, you can suffer with that collateral damage for years, for decades. Relationships disintegrate. It's not a good time. And so, going back to what Pat said, and collateral damage will really reveal the demons. Because and that can have as devastating an effect on on an individual than the divorce itself.
The key to remember is that marriage is to replicate the image of God. Sometimes it doesn't happen for whatever reason, whether there's violence in the home, whether cultures are clashing to the point where you can't. So, and there are times where the only thing that can be done is for two people to recognize that what we have intended for one another is not manifesting itself in what we have. For the greater peace, we separate. And so what happens after that? When divorce is the death of marriage. The question now becomes is how do you build that greater peace? Because there has to be redemption even in divorce.
Nick, you guys ever know anyone who they would divorce, but they still tight? They're like still close.
I've seen some of that. Yeah,
they're still like friends. And
I wonder about them people.
But they were friends first. They were friends,
and sometimes that's the way it just needs to be. And sometimes we take it and think that because I feel this way about you, or because I'm overwhelmed with our friendship, then God is moving us into this direction. And then you just messed up a friendship by getting married. I mean, sometimes it's just like that. I think that that you're talking about peace. That peace that comes along with divorce. There's a spiritual peace when God says, leave Ephraim alone. There's a spiritual peace that comes along when God says, hey, I need to remove myself from you. We always talk about us removing ourselves from God, but God allows it. To me, the whole sanctity of marriage is spiritual from the very beginning all the way through. And we're trying to find a legal term for a mixture of two people. If now new Christians look at it as Jesus as the bride, no, Jesus as the husband,
the husband,
right?
The husband.
And we are the bride, and he's coming back for us, and this, that, and the other. We try to find different ways to feel comfortable about spirituality, but the truth is that if some of us don't get divorced, we're going to hell.
Mm.
And if some of us stay married, we're going to hell. So if you don't find I mean, there's no other way to really to really get through it. We don't have a 3-4 hour
says
program.
marriage is about demons and hell.
but I want to add to what Pat is saying in the sense, and what Tally was saying, because it doesn't have to be violence, but you know, when you grow to the point that you can't be civil and kind to the people in your home, and you are so abusive, but then you go to church and you act real holy, and you come back home and you repeat abuse, you know, that's a terrible situation. But you know, when you go for counseling, they might not see the abusive person before them. They just see the nice, sweet person that they always see at church, but they don't see what's happening in the home. So when you state that peace of mind, you know, that God has called us to peace, you know, that is very serious. And so when I don't know, Tally, when we are telling people to remain in that situation, it's just a difficult thing, very difficult.
Right.
I want everyone to notice, though, that nobody's here saying that people should remain anywhere. I mean, what we're saying is what the intent of marriage is, what divorce is, which is the death of that intent. And then the principle that guides us from that point on is to find ways to redeem it through the building of peace. The demons have released Pat and allowed him to come back to us.
Can I explain, Tally, do you mind if I explain when I say, and people say remain in it? Because when you're in church, and I know there are going to be people who are listening who are maybe not affiliated with church. When you're in church, what do people tell you to do? Stay together.
Trust God.
Stay together.
Pray about it.
You do it.
And that's just
and so when I say, because we're talking to the people, and there are others who are going through some very tough situations, and folks say, stay together. And you know, there's that concept of spiritual abuse, when people will use the scriptures to make two wrongful people stay together. But so that's what I mean when I say, and people will say stay together when they don't really know what's happening in the home.
Let me ask this question, you know, because then it goes to what the church does as a people and an institution. I don't think, and I've personally gone through this, I don't think that the church, most churches, or maybe some churches, because I don't have any real data on this, I just have life experience, don't know how to handle divorce amongst membership.
Yeah.
And I've felt it, I've seen it where a attending couple, suddenly there is conflict, controversy, they are heading towards divorce. And it seems like, or if I have experienced, that some people are just silent on the issue. They don't know what to say to you. They don't want to say the wrong thing. They want to be supportive, but they don't know the whole picture. And I've seen allegiances formed. Oh, well, he's a good guy, so it probably must be her.
Yeah.
Or she's so sweet, he must be the one.
Yeah.
And sometimes the church can be as damaging as the event itself.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, I think we've all hit on the value, some valued points as to what leads people to divorce. But the question, and Charles, you raise a good point now. How should the church act? One of the things I was trying to push towards us is the fact that if we recognize that the idea of marriage is to demonstrate the image of God, and that divorce is the death of that, and then the Apostle Paul says, "But we're created to live in peace." What we have to ask ourselves after that is, how do we restore that image? You know, in brokenness, which is what redemption is all about: restoring the image in brokenness. And how do we make sure that the things that we do afterwards allow for the establishment of the peace that was almost ruined by the marriage? And so there are times where we have to say, as a church, as a community, we have to say, okay, GP is divorced. All right. So now what do we do? What do we do with him? How do we act towards him so that we can restore the image? And how do we then allow him to live in a way that creates peace? If for example, GP divorces in my church, and he says, now I want to start dating the head usher because I've been looking at her for a while, and his wife is still sitting over there holding the baby on her lap, that doesn't create peace.
Right.
And so I have to tell him, listen, man, we want you to be happy and content, but you can't do that here.
Right.
He might have to go to another church, another congregations. And the problem we have is we want to create a one-size-fits-all law that governs everybody, when in reality you have to ask yourself, what restores the image of God? What allows for the greatest restoration of the image of God? What allows for peace? And you have to work it out piece by piece.
Absolutely.
And that's harder, but it is more redemptive than saying, well, the Bible says that then even if you commit adultery, well, then you can't get. I mean, think about that. You get a 26-year-old person, they get divorced, say, well, you can't get married no more. You're gonna have to be celibate, and that guy's sitting in church looking like this for the next 10 years because he can't figure out what to
for whatever
do.
reason, right?
With the hormones racing through his body like Usain Bolt, and because he's trying to be holy. And
what's not helpful is that the church, and when I say the church, I'm not necessarily meaning the Seventh-day Adventist Church as an institution. I'm talking about the people,
the church,
the people of the church often rush to guilt and innocence. Okay, who's the guilty party? Who's the innocent party? And they become side hustle detectives trying to find out things.
Side hustle.
I saw him with, or she was walking with, and it's ridiculous and it's harmful and it adds fuel to the fire. And we don't, and a lot of times we don't think anything's wrong with that because we're just trying to protect the church and protect the law and protect when what we're doing is destroying a family.
Tasha said, are we really?
I mean,
go ahead.
I don't know. I was going to share that I had some friends who divorced, and honestly, I didn't know. I was one of those people. I didn't know what to say. I wasn't trying to investigate, but I didn't know what to say to either party. So in that case, I said nothing. And one of the individuals, the female in the situation, came to me and said that hurt her. She said, we were friends. You saw that I was going through a divorce and you didn't reach out. And it broke my heart because I thought I was respecting their space, respecting what she was going through. And what she was telling me is I just needed to know that my friends were still there. And
I've been shot. It's
very important.
Tasha, I saw that you were shot in the head, and I wanted to respect your.
But because what I'm saying is, it's like they got divorced. There was no progression to the divorce. I didn't know the divorce was coming, so I felt like if I wasn't privy to, we're going through problems. Then when the divorce happened, they wanted things to be private. So I took the chastisement. I felt bad after that. And I made it a point now to be a little bit more intentional when that comes, not hide away from it, shy away from it, but still engage individuals. That doesn't mean, they want to be, left alone necessarily.
One of the problems that we have in our church, because we're perfectionistic, is that we always feel the need to fix things. And so if we can't fix it, we just don't say anything. But the way you confront pain and brokenness is you say, Charles, look, man, I know that this has to be painful, and I know this isn't what you intended, and I can only imagine how you're feeling. I mean, if you need to talk, I'm willing to listen. I can't fix it for you, but and worse yet, especially in our fellowship, we are highly judgmental because the God that we serve is highly judgmental. I mean, the Adventist God is sitting in a room with a computer waiting for you to go to sleep so he can catch you. And so that is the way we approach things. We feel like we have to make a decision about who's right and who's wrong, when in reality, it's just who is. They just are. I mean, you might say, you might know that so-and-so that the wife was having an affair with the mailman and everybody else knows it. That doesn't change the fact that they're human beings in need of redemption.
Right.
And so the key becomes, you open your arms, you say, listen, I know that things didn't go the way you wanted to, and it has to be hurtful for the marriage to go where it's gone. What can we do now to help you rediscover your place? Now, let me ask you about remarriage.
Wait. Before you go there,
Wait. Yeah, both of us. Me and Pat. Pat and I were just waiting for a pause. Go right ahead, Pat.
Hear my pause.
You know, the church is lacking in therapy. Period.
That's what Marlene said. They're crazy. They got demons.
Hey,
divorce recovery. Yeah.
No. When you
I
start
said
to
we
think
have mental illness.
when you think, but when you start to think,
we're selfish.
When you start to think about that, you know, and Tally, you said this. We're looking for perfection at a certain place, and we want everyone out there who are sitting in the pews, husband and wife, to sit together with their 3 kids. The dog is at home, and a white picket fence outside, and all of our families are just simply not like that. I think we lack from the pulpit, and we lack teaching that it's okay to argue, and it's okay to fight. It's okay to
verbally.
I had said to my elders, always have a sermon, whether I'm there or not, because I can get into an argument with my wife coming to speak, and I don't feel like speaking anymore.
One of those 2 reasons out of 100, huh?
That's the third one that I didn't want to get on. But here's the thing. So what do? One of the best marriage therapists that I know, he's divorced. The best marriage therapist that I know, he'll go and he will fix your stuff. You know what I mean by that? You know what I mean by he'll fix it. He'll come in, run a seminar, and you'll be like, wow. And I know I'm a friend of his. So I stop and I say, hey, so-and-so, which he probably wouldn't mind me saying is one of my teachers at WAU. I said, hey, how could you do this? And you're divorced. He was like, that's why. I've been through it. I understand it. I know the mistakes, and I wish I could have done better coming through. So I know what we need. We don't have enough vulnerable preachers. We don't have enough vulnerable teachers. So if Tally gets a divorce, get out of the pulpit, when really and truly, it may not be the thing for you to discuss, but it could be something that you could say, I've been there, and this is what I don't want you to go through, or this is what I don't want you to get through. So now we have therapists because of 9/11. We now have therapists because of COVID. We now have therapists but we have no one to stand up to say, at AY today, we're going to bring in a family therapist. And we're going to have some discussions about what really happens at home and what goes on. No one's going to show up because that's supposed to be private between you and God. And now you're living in this hole and you're suffering in this hole. How other way to come out of it? Let me just say this, Marlene, before it comes to you. Many people may feel that I'm a big proponent of divorce. I'm not.
That's right.
I'm not. I believe that God work it through. But but my life goes this way. I don't want to die tomorrow. Remember, Nick, what you said. Divorce is the death of a marriage. I don't want to die. So I'm looking for all these things to keep my marriage where it needs to be. And in doing that, it has opened my eyes to what is killing my marriage, or what has the potential of killing my marriage. So you have to see the negative and you have to see the positive in order to be able to fix whatever the positive might be. So I know somebody's going to write me today, shame on you, or whatever the case may be. I'm planning on being with Natalie till the day I die, but I cannot determine whether she wants to be with me until the day she dies. And so this is the reason why that mixture that comes together, I don't care about the conference office, but I do care about mom and dad. And I do care about my children. And I do care about what they'll think about me. And I do care about you do care about those type of things. So hold on. Go ahead. He's making another phone call.
No. Natalie said, yeah. And if you keep bringing her up in this thing, that day you die is going to be a lot quicker than you thought. Yeah, we got it, Natalie. I'll share that with them. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Marlene, I'm going to pass this to you on this way.
We're going to save your marriage.
We need more marriage therapists. We need more marriage therapists to be in the congregation.
And if I might add, I just wanted to say this before we get off of this topic, that because divorce is so destructive, here you have whoever's divorcing whoever, or it could be both parties. You feel isolated and broken.
Sure.
In-laws may push you away because blood is thicker than water, right? So it just depends on, how they see you. So you could be isolated from them. Then the church can isolate you. Oh, you should never do this. And so so here you have someone that is left in their brokenness. They can't go to some family, they can't go to the church, so they feel outside, right? And it can alter even how they see God. Now, this is very important, because as church, it was stated, we always want to fix something, right? And so you have multiple people in the church that now are talking, and they want to fix this couple's marriage. And then, as Brother Chuck and Tally said, you're breaking it and you're making it more fractured instead of loving people. We don't need your opinion. We don't need your scriptures. We don't need you how you falsely using the scriptures. Your judgment, your condemnation. And there's a scripture in the Bible that says, mind your own business. Is in the Bible. And so we have to make sure that you just love people. Love them. And as Tally says, you can say, I'm sorry that this happened to you. Because, guys, sometimes divorce comes after you. You had no intention, no desire, but something happened so devastating, and it tears up the family so much. That's your only resolution. And so if you're in that place, you just want to be loved. And
That's
so
right.
as a church, instead of us trying to break people down, or tell them to go back into a harmful situation that you know not of, because he or she shouts the most at the church, but you don't know how they are in that house. Instead of telling them to go back, just love both of them.
Well,
And leave.
That's hard for some of us to do,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
and leave things to God, because it is a personal situation between them and God.
Right.
Well,
It has
no,
nothing to do with you.
Let me just add something. It is my business. Marriage, when you get married, I want you to recognize something. When you get married, you don't just go and get married. You have to go down to the court, register it,
Witnesses,
get witnesses. Your marriage is my business.
How is
And then if you decide you don't want
your business,
that's
outside of it.
I'm not outside of it. Your marriage is a part of my community. When you get married, you have to go ask the community, can you get married? And then if you decide you don't want to be married anymore, you have to ask the community, can I not be married? It is my business.
Well,
the problem becomes
before a judge, though. I don't see that as being
no. The judge is representative of the community. The problem is that we don't know how to handle our business well all the times. And let's look at the church. If Pat is in my church and he gets a divorce from Natalie, it is my business. Because let's say Pat and Natalie divorce, and we care about both of them, and then Natalie says, now that I'm divorced from Pat, me and the choir director, we're going to start hanging out together. That is confusing. It is disruptive. Remember, the idea is to maintain the image of God.
Hold on, let me see the choir director.
Which is a matter of covenant and relationship.
At West Church. Who's the choir
But
director?
can I say, but Pat, I'm not Pat, not you. Tally.
I'm Justin. Yes.
Tally, Justin, whoever you like to be right now. Wouldn't that be the place of the minister who is there to nurture the flock, to care for that couple and lead them correctly so that peace does remain in the church, versus 2, 3, 5, 20 people in the church that comes to you? Because if you tell them that your family is their business, I don't agree with that.
I think you both kind of saying the same.
No, we ain't.
Well, I think when you're saying it is my business, some situation, it is my concern.
Yeah.
Because when you say it's my business, that sounds controlling. That sounds like I'm going to.
I don't mean to say that.
Okay, listen, it's my business. So but I think it's more of, yes, it's my concern.
It
Because
affects.
to be fair, you have to be concerned about both parties.
Right.
Chuck, Latasha made a statement about a friend of hers that was divorced, and she thought she was doing the right thing by saying nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mhm.
I've lost a best friend of over 30 years because they got a divorce, and it seemed as the best friend is the guy. It seemed as though I took up in one instance
For her.
for his wife,
Wow.
Mhm.
and we don't talk anymore.
Mhm.
So I say,
And
love
that's what
both
you have to
people.
be careful of.
That's what I say.
It's
It is
hurtful.
Love them both.
no. See, the issue is not whether you love. See, love makes you my business.
I agree with that. I think that sometimes we don't know
That's what
what to say.
when I say my business, I don't mean that you control it, but let's be
Make
honest
that
with
clear,
ourselves.
Tally,
Yeah,
because
Let's be honest.
people are
Hold on, Nick.
intrusive.
Before you do that, I talked to another friend that's divorced about the situation, and the other friend said, "I wouldn't talk to you either."
Hmm.
The point is that sometimes we don't know what to say.
That is
Sometimes
very true.
we
Yeah.
don't know. We think we're saying the right thing, and
Yeah, and some people who claim to be concerned and claim to make it their business
They
are
nosy.
only trying to gather the facts.
Yup.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so they
Sure.
can determine who's the guilty party
The-
and who's the innocent party. I know this from, this is not something I read in a book. I know this from
absolutely.
something, from experience. They will come with a form of righteousness
Well,
Mm,
Mm.
and get
Deny the
all the
power
juicy
thereof.
details,
Mm.
and then for themselves decide on who they're going to share it with and what conclusion they're going to come with in judgment as to who's guilty and who's innocent. We have to be careful as a people.
yeah.
You know, love should be unconditional,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and we need to learn how to practice that. We've become so institutionalized and so uh, law, laden.
And
Mhm.
self-righteous.
Yes, that we, divorce, it hurts a lot of people. It hurts the children.
It
Yeah.
does. It hurts the
You
people
know,
who get
so
divorced.
yeah,
That's
and
right.
so
It's
we,
painful.
it's not black and white, and it's not.
So,
It can be very, very complex.
I know that we're getting ready to land the plane, and then we have to. And this is why this issue is what it is. It is complex. It is nuanced. It is layered, and we try to
Mhm.
handle it by creating a couple of laws. Unless there's adultery, you can't divorce. Stupid things like that. But the mere fact that people get it wrong doesn't mean that we should not try to help people get it right. A community, a marriage belongs not simply to two people, it belongs to a community.
Mhm.
And therefore, for example, all of you, everybody has children here. Guy comes in, gets divorced. He has a reputation, gets divorced. And you say, let's love him and let's treat him, just leave him alone. And now he's dating your daughter. All of a sudden, you're going to want to have something to say about it. And you should. And he should be open to it. The community has something to say. But the question becomes, and Marlene, I agree with you. If you have a pastor that, and at West Church, I had Dr. Beverly Gordon, who is she's an extraordinary therapist. She relieved me greatly by helping with some of the issues that exist in relationships. She's excellent. But the fact of the matter is that sometimes the community has to make decisions.
Mm.
They have to say, the community has the right to say, yes, you may be able to get married again, but not here because of this. Or, maybe you can start dating again, but not now because of the impact it's having here, because the image of God has to be maintained and peace has to be established. The community does have a right to express, but it needs to do it in love and with understanding.
Yeah, that's the
May I
important
say,
part, in love and understanding, because sometimes people will, because whether they deem themselves as guilty or innocent, because of the reaction of the church and the rules of the church, may also divorce themselves from the church because
Yeah.
they cannot tolerate being stared at, and when they come to church, trying to maintain fellowship, trying to maintain, and they
And
know
that's
that they're in
okay.
that really Yeah, I know, but there are
That's
some.
okay.
I'm telling you, there's some churches, there's some
Marlene
members
says
that
it's not okay.
make it
Why is
different.
it not okay?
It's difficult.
It's not okay for the church to make people feel shamed if I'm
I didn't say
do-
that, Marlene.
No,
I
Okay,
no,
said
no,
all
it's
right,
that's
I'm
okay.
not what
saying
he meant.
I said it's
okay,
okay
all
for
right.
them to go somewhere else if
Right,
they feel
right,
uncomfortable.
right. Yeah,
Or they
I
may
get
need
that.
to go somewhere else.
True that, but this is what I want to say is that I understand what you're saying, that the community, that there is someone that needs to say something, but I feel that it should be a representative of the community, because I I've been pastoring 6 years, and before that head eldering for 11 years, and I've seen the comments of people destroy, and they think they are doing the right thing. And so if you set people free to say, "Oh, I'm the community, I have a right," then they are going to continue to destroy. That's why I said that if you love both people, right? And Tally, I get what you're saying. If it's a pastor or a counselor that will go to people in an appropriate way, that's so much better than all of these righteous people going to the folk and telling them how to live and what to do, and they have no idea what's going on, and they make this situation 10 times worse. So much so sometimes, even when they go to another church, there is such a spirit that they feel about the former place that they were, that sometimes they don't even see God. You understand what I'm saying? The things that will happen, they say, if God is like that, I want nothing to do with him.
Well, I can tell you, when I went through my challenges, I got more support outside of the church than I did in
And
the church.
inside, yeah.
Mercy.
And
I had colleagues, I
even
had,
the pastor didn't.
neighbors.
The pastor
No,
wasn't helpful.
not at all.
Sometimes,
Yeah.
sometimes that's
Almost destructive.
So
But
the
my colleagues
issue,
from work and my neighbors were more supportive than my church.
the issue is, are people mature and have they been trained to know how to respond? That's the issue. But the fact is that the community chimes in. You can't divorce yourself from the community.
And we have to acknowledge too the divorcees part in that, because I've had situations where a couple was divorcing and one party wanted to make sure that the church knew that the other one was at fault, and
Right.
it's almost like this campaign to show themselves as the innocent parties,
Yeah.
pity
Yeah.
me and ostracize that person. And I've seen literal campaigns, take place, and it puts people in a situation where maybe they don't want to get involved, and now they're
Right.
forcing them. Well, if you're my friend, you'll stand up for me. You'll make sure he's not the elder anymore, or you'll make sure that they force him out of the church. So it can kind of go both ways in how the church gets involved, and that's why I was glad you mentioned the peace. After you make that decision, what's your part in restoring peace? And sometimes it's not for us to feel like we have to defend our reason for getting divorced by putting down the other person, or making sure, because that hurts relationships too, because now someone feels I have to choose between these two people because one person told me that if I speak to him or if I speak to her, then that means that I'm not on their side. And I've seen that happen in church too, where people have lost friendships because one party demanded that they not speak to the other one.
Right.
So,
Right.
there's so many factors where the church gets put into the business, maybe when they don't want to be.
I have been asked to unfriend my husband or unfriend my wife on Facebook.
Wow.
And if you don't unfriend them,
Right.
then you're not my pastor anymore, or
Right.
you're not my this or that anymore. I've actually been
The
through that.
loyalty comes into play.
Yep.
Yeah.
What we're talking about now is a lack of Christian maturity.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's different from trying to enunciate and suss out principles and as to how we'll deal with people who are divorced. And we are immature. I mean, the God that we serve and the God that we paint is one who is very judgmental and who is and the atmosphere of our fellowship inclines itself towards perfectionism. You got to be perfect. You know, guard the edges of the Sabbath. I saw you coming out of Walmart at 6:01 and the sun sets at 6. You're going to straight hell. You know?
And what we miss, Nick,
well, let's hope
is
there's
that
a Walmart there.
And what we miss here's the most important piece of that story, Nick, is that the person was there too.
They were handing
because they saw you, right?
They were handing out tracks.
They were handing out like a pastor told me years ago. If you ever go into a bar, carry tracts with you. And then when you run into one of your members, say, "I didn't think I'd believe it, but I came here just to tell you."
You know, guys, I think that over the past 2.5 years or so, and it's not a bragging right to go back to school and learn about the mind, to go back to school and learn about the behavior of people. We do ourselves a disservice to feel that the Bible, man, I think I'm gonna get in trouble for that.
Well, you're in trouble for a lot of things. Just go on with it, man.
You're right. You know, we have to look, we have to look past the words in the Bible and start to look at what God is really trying to say or trying to do to us. And so I no longer look at the Bible as words of God, but as the word of God has character to it. And
director saying, "Don't look at the words in the Bible." Okay, I'm good.
Write it through. And it what I've learned from this conversation today, which I still think this can't be the only conversation, because someone's going to look at this as a negative thing, whereas marriage is beautiful, and marriage, there are great parts to marriage. But my grandmother used to say their marriage has teeth. And she said it at all of her grandchildren's weddings. She get up on the mic and she says, "Everybody, marriage have teeth," which means that if your tongue is in your mouth, it's going to bite, and there's going to be some pain. Hold on, go ahead, make your call.
Yeah, what you say, Elder Palmer? Yeah, yeah. No. I did see a Quran on his desk. Yeah, the Bible. Yeah, we'll let him know. Yeah. Sure. Oh, go ahead, please continue.
Well,
I don't know if I should, but go ahead.
You know,
but really, to wrap that is we have to have a relationship past the words with God, have a deeper relationship with Him, because there are divorced people are going to the kingdom, and you know,
divorced and remarried people too.
Yeah. We're gonna go back. Go to the
people with several wives, you know, and that's another one. The people, our perfectionism says you got to get it right, because when you get to heaven, because we're gonna be married forever. You know? Well, hey, look, let me leave you with this one. Here's a headache that I want you to carry with you. This is Deuteronomy chapter 24. Verses 1 through 4.
Okay. Can we have a happy ending?
Yeah, I'm always happy to see you guys have a headache.
Crash landing. Let's go.
Here it is. Now listen to this, because everybody says what you really want to see is you want to see people reconciled, right? Everybody. I mean, I can't tell you, people say, well, if your ex-wife is single and you're single, why don't the two of you listen to this?
Get back together. Yeah.
When a man takes a wife and marries her, if then she finds no favor, this is Deuteronomy 24, 1 through 4. When a man takes a wife and marries her, if then she finds no favor in his eyes because he has found some indecency in her, and he writes her a certificate of divorce and puts it in her hand and sends her out of his house, and she departs out of his house, and if she goes and becomes another man's wife, and the latter man hates her and writes her a certificate of divorce, puts it in her hand and sends her out of his house, or if the latter man dies, who took her to be his wife, then her former husband, who sent her away, may not take her again to be his wife. Yeah,
I read that before.
You up here talking about the words of
this is exactly why Pat said what he said.
I just want you. I'm just hoping that you guys will wrestle for the rest of this Sunday evening.
Well, you know what? You know what? I think though.
Hold on one second.
Pat has a call.
Elder Palmer.
Oh no!
Yeah, Tally wants to come back to the ministry.
He'll take any church.
You know, but you know, on the grand scheme of things, I know there are some people who are listening to this podcast that are going through it,
True.
or
True.
know someone that's going through it. And
Yeah.
we want to let you know it is not a laughing matter,
Mhm.
True.
and that we should all of us listening to this should learn, if we haven't learned already, to try to practice unconditional benevolence
Mm.
towards people who are struggling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I know we have a lot of levity here, and it's good. I mean, I like it, but I'm concerned about that person that's listening to this and is on the edge or the
Yeah.
verge of,
Mhm.
and some of them are frightened and don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Good point.
So we just want to encourage you, and we want to encourage those who can encourage and affirm and support,
Chuck,
that at the end of the road, it will be okay.
Chuck, let me add this. We do have on our website where you can go to a marriage therapist and sit down and have a conversation with them. Sometimes breaking the 6th time to the 12th time that you meet with them. I'm not saying you're not going to end up in divorce. I'm saying you're trying to at least get to a point of, even if you're not understanding the next person, it's at least going to have you understand who you are and what's going on with you, because it's terrible guilt even when you're doing the right thing. It's
That's
terrible
right.
guilt that you're living through. Marlena first started talking about crazy people, and you know what I mean by that. There are people who have dysfunctions, mental illnesses, right? Depression, anxiety. Depression and anxiety can cause can cause a marriage to fail.
True.
And yet we don't want to see anyone. I'm telling you that that a tune-up will work. Not will work. A tune-up is a good way to go for marriages who you think it's all good. It's a help to it. Get with a therapist. And I do know that we have it on our site. Dr. David Defoe is on his site, family, on our family
Relationship
ministries.
Yeah.
And do me a favor, if you don't have the funding for it, talk to your pastor. You know, they may know someone, or they may have discretionary funds where they could at least pay for 6 sessions that will at least take you to the point of understanding who you are, so that you can understand what your marriage is like.
And I just want to end my final line. I'm going to end is that those of us that are on the peripheral, we need to learn how to get over this Christian immaturity that we have towards our fellow members. Start with yourself. And then
Nick, I
you
don't
can
trust
be a
you.
greater. You can.
You
have
told
a greater
Natalie to
love.
call me.
Oh no.
I'm sorry, Chuck. You were going with your thing. Go ahead, Chuck.
No. I was just saying that, Nick, you mentioned immaturity, and the church suffers from that greatly, and we need to start with ourselves. My reaction to controversial things within my membership, am I mature? Am I handling it right? Am I praying about it, or am I adding salt to the wound? Because we can do that. We think we're helpful and we're not. We're destructive. So let's give that some thought, because individuals that are going through these hurtful events need support, and it needs to be genuine.
Yeah.
Not like you check the service manual and, oh, this is what I do when that happens. No, it's got to come from the heart. If it doesn't come from the heart, then who cares if it comes from the book?
Well said.
Yeah.
And to just go along with that too, I think it's important when people come to us who may be considering it or have already made the decision, for us to not take out our little checklist. Did you go to counseling? Did we do this thing where they're coming to us for support, and we're, making sure you've done everything before you gotten to this point, or doing it in a way that's a little less of, this is the only way that I can sign off on this decision that you've made. But I think you said it best, Chuck, in terms of being genuine. And that's something we need to work on before people approach us. We need to work on how we love people. And I think that's why it's important for us to continue to study Christ, continue to develop our Christianity, because the love is what's going to motivate us. Love is what's going to take care of that immaturity that we talked about. So
absolutely.
When we see people, we're no longer seeing the divorce. We're seeing someone who's hurting. We're not looking at them as a label. We're looking at them as a person who is in grief, because we already said that death is.
And let's not look at them as a project.
Right. Yeah,
here's a project I got to work on.
That's well, I turn it over put it place back into the capable hands of our fearless leader, one Tasha Hewitt. Take it away, Tasha.
Well, Nick, as always, you did an outstanding job, and I'll tell you, I'm sitting here, my heart's going 1,000 miles an hour, because I said, can I keep up with this guy or what? Or should I just go sidecar?
Great job, Nick. And I think we need a part 2, because there's so much more that hasn't been said.
That's true.
I know we want to talk, because we wanted to talk about remarriage, because that's another layer after divorce, and there's some things that the church knows about that.
Sent you a message that I was talking to Nick. Did you get my message about Holly Berry? I thought you got my message.
Okay. That's an inside joke, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes,
that's a green room joke.
Green room.
Yeah, it is.
Nick,
but no, and we always want to know what you guys think about the things that we're talking about. These are just our thoughts.
I don't know about this.
How can they contact us?
I don't know.
Yeah, email us. upset@aecsda.com. And if we do a part 2, give us some aspects maybe that we didn't cover that you'd like us to cover in the part 2, because we recognize that this is definitely something that is in our churches. People have experienced it. They're currently going through it. They're currently contemplating it. So it's not something that's going to go away. And the more we discuss it, the better we can be.
Yeah. And I would encourage, just for our own knowledge and our own full understanding, is explain to us perhaps the situation you're in anonymously. We don't have to know your name and what church you're from or your pastor, but just share with us, what you're going through, and if the podcast was helpful.
Yes,
it would be
that
good
helps. That's a good one. All right, guys. Well, thank you for being willing to discuss the D word today. As you said, we hope that these conversations are not just that, conversations, but something that can help somebody receive some type of breakthrough or look at things a little differently.
Right.
Oh, Lord.
Right. And new rule: no phone calls during the podcast.
Yes. Right. All right, guys. It's been real. We'll see you next Sunday, same time, same place.
Same
Have a great week.
Bye,
Take
family.
care, everybody.
Blessings.
Bye-bye.